Welcome to our deep dive into Alvin Toffler's Future Shock.
Future Shock.
Yeah, have you read this one?
Oh, yeah. It's a classic.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, it was written back in 1970.
Wow.
But it's amazing how relevant it still is today.
I know. It's crazy how much of what he talked about is happening now.
Yeah, he was really ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So we're going to be taking a close look at some of Toffler's key ideas
Okay. Sounds so good.
about how rapid change can overwhelm us and how we adapt or, maybe fail to adapt.
Right.
And we're really going to focus on the human side of all this,
Okay.
using everyday examples to kind of bring his points to life.
I like that.
Yeah, because, he talks about things like subcultures,
Yeah.
lifestyles, family life, work,
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of things that are still super relevant today.
Absolutely.
So one of the first things that really struck me about this book
Okay.
was Toffler's concept of the 800th lifetime.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It's such a powerful way to visualize just how much change we've experienced in recent history.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does. So imagine compressing all of human history
Okay.
into 800 lifetimes.
Okay.
It's only in this very last lifetime, this 800th lifetime,
Wow.
that we've seen this crazy acceleration of change.
Yeah.
Like everything's just sped up exponentially.
It makes you wonder what the next lifetime's going to look like.
Right, I know. And he links this acceleration directly to technology.
Oh, absolutely.
He has this great comparison about book production
Okay.
that really blew my mind.
Okay. I'm interested.
So back in the 1500s,
Mm-hmm.
it took an entire century
A whole century.
to create a library of 100,000 books.
Wow.
But by the 1960s,
Yeah.
the world was churning out that many books every single day.
Wow. Every day. That's a
It's insane.
lot of books.
It is. So it's not just that we're creating more stuff.
Right.
We're creating it at an unbelievably faster rate.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really appreciate about Toffler
Mm-hmm.
is that he doesn't just focus on the shiny, happy side of progress.
Right.
He points out that all this acceleration throws us into these situations
Yeah.
that we've never had to deal with before.
Yeah. No precedent for it.
Right? We have no experience to draw on.
Like we're making it up as we go along.
Exactly. And that can be really disorienting.
Absolutely.
He even tells this heartbreaking story about an 11-year-old boy
Oh.
named Ricky Gallant
Okay.
who died of premature aging.
Wow.
And it's a really powerful way to illustrate this point
Yeah.
that the speed of change itself
Mm-hmm.
can actually have a real tangible effect
Right.
on our lives.
On our bodies, even.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
So I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
when you think about your own life,
Okay.
all the choices you make every day,
Sure.
how much of that is influenced by this feeling
Okay.
of constantly trying to keep up,
Yeah.
with this rapid pace of change?
I think that's a constant tension. Trying to keep up while also trying to live your life,
Right.
Like
yeah,
this constant balancing act.
it really is.
And Toffler gives some pretty vivid examples
Okay.
of just how intense this acceleration can be.
Yeah. Give me an example.
So he talks about urbanization
Okay.
and how back in the 1960s,
Yeah.
we would needed to build a new city the size of Tokyo,
Wow.
Hamburg,
Okay.
Rome,
Well,
and Rangoon combined,
all together,
all together every single year just to keep up with population growth.
that's mind-boggling.
I know, isn't that crazy?
It's hard to even picture that.
I know, it just gives you a sense of the scale of
Yeah.
this change.
It's massive.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And then he even talks about how some architects were proposing these radical solutions,
Is that really like what?
like building subterranean cities.
Underground.
Yeah, underground, or like these ocean cities.
Ocean cities, like on stilts or?
Yeah, like on stilts or floating platforms.
Wow, that's thinking big. I know it's like straight out of science fiction.
Yeah, but it shows you like the kind of ideas people were having.
All right.
Just to try to cope with this growth and change.
And it's not just about population either.
Yeah.
Toffler points out how technology itself
Mm-hmm.
is like this self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
It constantly speeds up the process of going from an idea
Mm-hmm.
to its application.
Like things are just moving faster and faster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this feedback loop
Yeah.
that's just constantly accelerating.
And that leads to a lot of what he calls transience, right?
Yes, transient.
This idea that everything is becoming more temporary.
It is, and it's like it's affecting everything.
Everything, like what?
Our relationships with,
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
places, even people.
Yeah.
They're all shorter and more fleeting than ever before.
It's interesting. Like, how do you even build a life
And,
when everything's so temporary?
it's a really good question, and I
Yeah.
think that's what Toffler is getting at. He's not just describing this phenomenon.
Right.
He's asking us to really grapple with it.
To think about the implications.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he uses this term, ephemeralization.
Ephemeralization.
It's a mouthful.
It is, but it's kind of a perfect word for it.
It is. It really captures this sense of things being,
Yeah.
designed to be disposable.
Like they're meant to be used up and then tossed aside.
Yeah, like that example he gives
What's that?
about the little girl who trades in her Barbie doll
Oh, yeah.
for the latest model.
It's like there's always something newer and better just around the corner.
Exactly. And it's not just about consumerism.
Right.
It's this deeper shift in how we relate to the material world.
Yeah, like we don't value things the same way anymore.
Right. There's no sense of permanence.
And he talks about how this transience is showing up in all sorts of ways.
It is like an architecture.
Oh, yeah. How so?
He talks about modular architecture.
Okay.
Where buildings are designed to be easily reconfigured.
Mm-hmm.
Or even torn down after just a few years.
Wow. So they're not even meant to last.
Wow, it's kind of wild.
Yeah.
And then there's the rise of renting things instead of owning them.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah, like cars, clothes, even furniture.
It's like we're moving away from ownership entirely.
It seems like it. And he has this story about an architect in Miami
Oh, really?
who's describing these apartment buildings being demolished
Okay.
after only 10 years.
10 years. That's it.
Yeah, and not because they're falling apart,
Why then?
but because newer buildings have better air conditioning.
Really? Wow. That's
It's kind of crazy, right?
It is. Like, what happened to just fixing things?
I know, it's this constant drive for the new and improved.
And this transience, it's not just about stuff either, right?
No, you're right. It extends to people, too.
People, how so?
Toffler talks about how we're becoming more mobile,
Mm-hmm.
constantly on the move.
Always going somewhere.
Yeah, he calls it a new nomadism.
A new nomadism.
I like that.
And he uses all these wild examples.
Like that massive spring break migration
Spring break.
to Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then there are these California ranch owners
Okay.
who commute over 100 miles each way by plane
By plane. Wow.
just to work on their ranches.
That seems a little extreme.
It does. It's like something out of a movie.
It is, but I guess it shows how geography is becoming less relevant.
Right, exactly. And then there's that story about the Pennsylvania teenager
What about him?
who flies all the way to Frankfurt.
To Frankfurt, Germany.
Yeah, just to see his orthodontist.
Really? Just for an orthodontist appointment?
I know it sounds crazy, but it's true.
That's wild.
And get this, he has another example of a University of Chicago philosophy professor
Okay.
who commutes 1,000 miles every week
1,000 miles.
to teach a class in New York.
Wow, that's dedication.
It is. It's like these long-distance commutes
Yeah.
are becoming the new normal.
So work and life aren't tied to a specific location anymore?
Exactly. And that brings us to this really interesting idea that Toffler explores.
Okay, what's that?
The idea of the modular man
Modular man.
and the associative man.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, because it raises this question of
Okay.
what does it even mean to have a career,
Mm,
a community,
yeah.
a family
Uh-huh.
in this world where everything is temporary?
Right, where you're constantly moving.
Yeah, and we're constantly bombarded with change.
It's like the ground is always shifting under our feet.
It is, and Toffler argues that our relationships,
Okay.
especially in the workplace,
Yeah.
are becoming shorter
Mm-hmm.
and more fragmented.
So it's like the opposite of that old idea of the organization man?
Exactly, who was like,
Yeah.
deeply rooted
Mm-hmm.
in a single company
Mm-hmm.
and community.
Yeah, like a company man.
Yeah, for his entire career.
Right.
But now it's like we're all free agents,
Free agents.
hopping between projects and teams,
Yeah.
forming these temporary connections,
Uh-huh.
and then moving on.
It's like the gig economy on steroids.
It kind of is. And he
Mm.
shares this really striking statistic
Okay, what's that?
that back in the 1960s,
Yeah.
1 in 3 young executives
Mm-hmm.
had jobs that didn't even exist
Wow.
before they took them.
That's crazy.
It is. It just shows how quickly
Yeah.
the job market is changing.
And how whole industries can just appear and disappear
Right.
practically overnight.
It's mind-boggling. So instead of climbing
Yeah.
this stable career ladder
Mm-hmm.
within a single organization,
Right.
we're more like hopping between these different lily pads.
Lily pads, I like that.
forming these temporary connections and then moving on to the next one.
It's a very different way of working.
It is, and it raises all these questions.
Yeah, like what?
About, how do we build a sense of belonging in this kind of world?
Yeah, where everything's so fluid and temporary.
It's a big question.
It is.
And I think it's one that Toffler is really wrestling with in this book.
And he calls this new type of worker associative man, right?
Yes, he does.
And what's that about?
So it's this idea that
All right.
we're no longer defined by our membership in a single organization or community.
So it's more about our ability to connect
Yes, exactly.
with different people.
Yeah.
To form these
kind of temporary alliances.
Yes, these temporary alliances.
And to move on.
And collaborate effectively.
Yeah, with all these different groups.
And then move on to the next thing.
So it's like a different set of skills.
It is. It's a different set of skills.
That are needed to thrive in this kind of environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a really different way of thinking about work and identity.
It is. I'm curious, like in your own career, have you seen this shift?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Towards this more temporary project-based work?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially in my field. It's like the days of staying with one company for your whole career are long gone.
Yeah, they're pretty much over.
Pretty much. It's all about,
being adaptable, being able to learn new skills quickly,
right,
and being comfortable with change.
Because change is the only constant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all this adapting, this constant need to be always on.
It takes a toll.
It does.
It's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what Toffler calls
what's that?
Future shock.
Future shock. Okay, I've heard that term before.
It's like this psychological state of disorientation and distress that's caused by too much change.
Too much change, too fast.
Too much stimulation.
Yeah, like you're overloaded.
Exactly. And it can manifest in all sorts of ways.
Like what?
Have you ever felt like really anxious?
Oh, yeah.
Irritable? Unable to focus?
Definitely.
Maybe even physically ill?
I've been there.
Because things were just changing too fast around you?
Yeah, like you can't keep up.
Right.
Too much.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Especially these days.
Especially these days with technology.
Right.
And the pace of life just keeps accelerating.
It's relentless.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's not like we can just stop progress.
Right.
So what do we do about it?
Yeah, that's the big question.
What does Toffler suggest?
I'm all ears. Well, he actually offers a whole range of coping strategies.
Okay.
Both individual and societal.
Okay, I'm interested.
So one of the things he really emphasizes is the importance of limiting our exposure to change.
Limiting our exposure to change.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive.
It does.
In a world that's all about embracing the new, right?
Right.
But he's not saying we should, become Luddites.
Okay, so it's not about like rejecting technology altogether.
No, not at all. It's more about being selective.
Yeah,
setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries, I like that.
Yeah, it could be as simple as limiting your time on social media.
Okay.
Being more mindful about the news you consume.
Right.
Or even just taking a break from technology.
Digital detox.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Toffler calls these stability zones.
Stability zone.
Yeah, these are like spaces where we can find refuge from the constant stimulation.
Refuge from the storm.
Exactly. And they can be physical spaces like your home or a favorite park, or they can be activities like reading, gardening, spending time with loved ones.
Like creating these little pockets of peace.
Exactly. It's about taking control.
Right.
Being intentional about what we let into our lives.
Creating those boundaries.
Exactly. And along with creating those stability zones, he also talks about the importance of prioritizing information.
Prioritizing information, that's a good one.
Yeah, because, we're just bombarded with so much information these days.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
It really is.
It's like a fire hose of information.
Exactly. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to develop these strategies for filtering out the noise. And focusing on what's truly relevant to us.
That's easier said than done, though, right?
It's definitely a challenge.
Like, how do you even begin to filter all that out?
Well, Toffler suggests becoming more discerning about the information we consume.
Okay, so like being more critical.
Exactly, like asking yourself, who's the source?
Right.
What's their agenda? Is this information accurate?
Yeah.
And most importantly, is it relevant to my life?
Okay.
My goals, my values.
So it's not just about absorbing information.
No.
It's about being critical, questioning it.
Right.
Filtering it.
It's almost like developing a mental immune system.
A mental immune system.
Yeah, protecting ourselves from information overload.
I like that.
Yeah, and if you find yourself struggling with this, Toffler also suggests seeking professional help.
Okay, so like therapy.
Yeah, talking to a therapist or counselor can be incredibly helpful in navigating major life changes.
Right.
And developing healthy coping mechanisms.
So it's about building resilience. Okay, those are all great individual strategies. But what about solutions at a societal level?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, like can we actually design a world that's less overwhelming?
Yeah.
Less prone to future shock?
I mean, that's the hope, right?
It is. So what does Toffler have to say about that?
Well, he has some interesting ideas.
Okay.
One of them is the concept of enclaves of the past.
Enclaves of the past.
Yeah, these would be communities where the pace of life is deliberately slower.
Okay.
More traditional.
Like Amish communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Where technology is limited.
Right.
And life revolves around a more traditional rhythm.
It's about finding a different pace.
Right. But isn't there a danger in that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there could be.
Like in retreating from the modern world? Could it lead to stagnation?
Yeah.
A resistance to progress?
Right? I mean, that's a valid concern.
It is.
Yeah.
So how does Toffler address that?
Well, he's not advocating for a wholesale rejection of technology. He sees these enclaves more as a counterbalance.
Okay.
A reminder that there are alternative ways of living.
Right.
That progress doesn't have to mean constant acceleration.
So it's about finding a balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Preserving what's valuable from the past while still embracing the possibilities of the future.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. And beyond these enclaves, Toffler calls for a more proactive and participatory approach to shaping the future.
Cool, like being more intentional about the future we want to create.
Exactly. He uses the term social futurism.
Social futurism.
And it's this idea of anticipating and planning for the future,
Okay.
but in a way that takes into account human needs and values.
So instead of just reacting to change, we need to try to anticipate it and steer it in a direction that benefits humanity.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
And he argues that traditional technocratic planning often falls short. Well, it tends to have a very short-term focus. And it often prioritizes technological progress over human well-being.
So we need new tools.
Yeah.
New ways of thinking about the future.
Exactly. New frameworks, new models.
So what does he suggest?
Well, he suggests things like the Delphi method.
The Delphi method?
And cross-impact matrix analysis.
Okay. I'm not familiar with those.
So these are forecasting tools that can help us think more systematically about the potential consequences of our actions and make more informed choices about technology.
So like anticipating the ripple effects of our decisions.
Yeah, like thinking about the long-term implications.
Yeah.
Not just the immediate impact.
That's really important.
It is, and it's something that we often don't do very well.
We're not very good at long-term thinking.
No, we tend to be very short-sighted.
Yeah, and that can lead to a lot of unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, how do you see these tools being applied in the real world?
Well, I think they could be incredibly valuable in all sorts of areas, like urban planning, education, healthcare.
Oh, yeah. Those are all areas that are facing huge challenges.
They are, and they're all being impacted by rapid change.
Right.
So imagine being able to anticipate the needs of the future and design systems that are more adaptable and resilient.
That would be amazing.
It would, and I think it's possible.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But Toffler doesn't stop there.
No, he doesn't.
He actually proposes this really radical idea.
Oh, really? What's that?
He calls it social future assemblies.
Social future assemblies.
Yeah, these would be like large-scale forums where citizens come together to debate and envision preferable futures.
So like a giant brainstorming session.
Yeah, exactly.
For future.
A collective effort to co-create the future.
I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty ambitious.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
It is. I can see how it could be really empowering.
Yeah.
You know, giving people a real voice in shaping their own future.
Exactly. And that was Toffler's hope. He believed that these assemblies could help combat the apathy and powerlessness that many people feel in the face of rapid change.
It's like taking back control.
Yeah, exactly.
Shifting from a passive to an active role.
Right.
From being shaped by the future to actively shaping it.
It's a really powerful idea.
It is.
Yeah.
And I remember he also talks about the need for a technology ombudsman.
Oh, yes. That's a great one.
It is. So remind me what that was all about.
So basically, it's someone who can advocate for the human side of technological development.
So like making sure that technology serves human needs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not just corporate profits or government agendas.
Yeah, because those are often the driving forces
Yeah.
behind technological development.
And it's like having someone whose job it is to ask, how will this new technology affect people's lives?
Right.
Will it create jobs or destroy them? Will it enhance our well-being or diminish it?
Those are important questions.
They are, and they're often overlooked.
Yeah, we tend to get caught up in the excitement.
Yeah, of the
new thing.
And we don't always stop to think about the long-term consequences.
And that's where technology ombudsman could be really valuable.
Yeah, it's like having a voice for the future.
Right.
Someone who can represent the interests of generations yet to come.
That's a really important role.
It is. And it's something that I think we need more of.
I agree.
And, speaking of the future, Toffler also talks about this other really interesting phenomenon.
Okay, what's that?
The explosion of choices.
Okay.
And the rise of subcultures.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is, and it's something that I think we're seeing even more of today.
Oh, absolutely.
Than back in the 1960s when he wrote this book. Yeah, it's like everything's become so much more fragmented.
It has. So basically, in a world of rapid change and increasing diversity, we're constantly bombarded with options.
Well, options everywhere.
Choices.
Right. And it's not just about, what kind of cereal to buy.
Okay.
Or what clothes to wear.
It's much bigger than that.
It extends to every aspect of our life.
Exactly.
Our careers, our education, our relationships, even our identities.
Right. It's like we're constantly being asked to choose.
Yeah.
To define ourselves.
Or curate our own personalized realities.
I like that, to curate our own personalized reality.
Yeah. It's like we're all becoming our own little brands.
It's kind of scary, actually.
It can be.
Because it's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure to be perfect.
Right.
To have it all figured out.
To make the right choices.
Yeah. And there's this fear of missing out.
FOMO.
Exactly.
Because there are just so many options.
So many paths you could take.
It's like this constant state of option overload.
Option overload.
And it can be really paralyzing.
It can, it's like you're standing in front of this giant buffet.
Okay.
And you're so overwhelmed by all the choices.
Right.
That you end up just eating a bowl of cereal.
Or not eating at all.
Or not eating at all.
Because you're just too overwhelmed to choose.
Exactly. And, Toffler calls this
what's that?
Overchoice.
Overchoice.
And he sees it as both a blessing and a curse.
Okay, how so?
Well, on the one hand, we have more freedom to choose than ever before.
We can create our own lives.
Exactly.
Tailor them to our own individual needs and desires.
Right. It's like this incredible opportunity
that is
to create a life that's truly our own.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, all those choices can be incredibly overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And paralyzing.
And anxiety producing.
Absolutely.
And it can also lead to this fragmentation of society.
Yeah. That's one of the things that Toffler was really concerned about.
Right, because as we all become more individualized, more focused on our own little subcultures, our own little bubbles, what happens to the things that bind us together?
Exactly what happens to the common good.
That's a really good question.
It is, and I'm not sure Toffler has a clear answer.
Yeah.
But he definitely raises the question.
He does, and it's a question that I think we're still grappling with today.
Oh, absolutely.
More than ever.
Yeah, as the world becomes more complex.
Right.
More interconnected.
And more fragmented all at the same time.
It's a paradox.
It is. It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, did Toffler ultimately see this trend towards overchoice?
Okay.
As positive or negative?
I think he was ambivalent about it.
Ambivalent? So, like, he saw both sides?
Yeah, he definitely saw both sides.
Okay.
He recognized the potential benefits, the freedom and individuality that it could unleash.
Right.
But he also worried that it could lead to a fragmentation of society, to a decline in social cohesion.
So, as with many things, it seems like there's a trade-off.
There often is.
We gain freedom and individuality. but we may lose a sense of shared identity.
Right.
A sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves.
What's the dilemma?
It is, and it's one that I think we need to be really mindful of.
I agree.
As we move further into this future of overchoice.
And rapid change. Yeah, and he saw this happening in everything.
Really?
Yeah, from consumer goods to education to even politics.
So it wasn't just about, like, you know, niche hobbies or fashion trends.
No, he saw this fragmentation happening on a much broader scale.
Wow.
Potentially reshaping the very fabric of society.
So, like, how do we even navigate that?
Yeah, it's a big question.
It is.
And I think one of the things that Toffler really emphasizes is the need to develop a stronger sense of what he calls future consciousness.
Future consciousness.
Yeah, it's about cultivating a more proactive an intentional approach to shaping the future.
So, like, instead of just reacting to change as it comes at us.
Exactly.
We need to be more deliberate about the future we want to create.
Yeah. And he talks about the importance of planning.
Okay.
But it's not the kind of short-term, technocratic planning that often fails to consider the human element.
Right. It's got to be more holistic.
Exactly.
Or human-centered.
Yeah. He envisions a more holistic and participatory approach.
Okay.
He suggests developing new forecasting tools and creating spaces for dialogue and deliberation.
So, like, getting people involved.
Exactly, giving people a voice.
In shaping the future.
Yeah, and he believed that this process could be incredibly empowering.
Empowering? How so?
Well, by giving individuals and communities a sense of agency in shaping their own destinies.
So it's not just about predicting the future.
Yeah.
It's about actively creating it.
Exactly.
I like that. And he also talks about the need for social imagination.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's like to break free from the constraints of the present.
And envision alternative futures that might seem radical or impossible today.
So, like, thinking outside the box.
Yeah, challenging our assumptions about what's possible.
And not being afraid to dream big.
Exactly. And he believed that we need new social structures and institutions to adapt to this rapid change.
Like new ways of organizing ourselves.
Yeah, new forms of education. Even new conceptions of family and community.
Wow, it's a lot to think about.
It is, but I think it's important to remember that Toffler was writing this book over 50 years ago.
I know, it's crazy to think about.
And the world has changed a lot since then.
It has, but in many ways.
Yeah.
His insights are even more relevant today.
I agree.
Than they were back then.
And one of his most intriguing ideas, I think, was this concept of social future assemblies.
Social future assembly.
Yeah, these large-scale forums where people come together.
To actually talk about the future?
It's exactly
Debate and envision preferable futures.
Like a massive town hall meeting focused on co-creating the future.
I love that idea.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And he even suggested using these assemblies to develop new social indicators.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So instead of just measuring, economic growth, we should be looking at things like quality of life.
Absolutely.
Environmental sustainability, social well-being.
Things that actually matter to people.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about creating a future that's truly aligned with human needs and values.
Exactly.
So it's not just about technological progress. It's about human progress. It's about creating a world where everyone can thrive.
I like that.
Yeah. So he was really advocating for a pretty fundamental shift in our mindset.
Okay.
From reactive to proactive.
Right.
From present focus to future focus. From a narrow view of progress to a more
holistic and humanistic one.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tall order.
It is.
But I think it's a challenge worth taking on.
I agree. And, while some of his ideas might seem utopian, I think the core message of Future Shock is incredibly powerful and timely.
It is.
We need to embrace the opportunities this rapidly changing world offers, while also being mindful of the risks.
The potential downside.
Exactly. And we have the power to shape the future.
We do.
But we need to be intentional and proactive about it.
I think that's a great takeaway.
It is. And, this deep dive has really made me think about my own relationship with change and the role we all play in creating the future.
It's a collective effort.
It is Future Shock. Is full of provocative ideas that are still so relevant today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Into Future Shock. I think it's safe to say that Alvin Toffler's work continues to offer valuable insights and challenges us to think critically about the world we're creating.
I couldn't agree more.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought as you navigate your own journey into the future.
Yeah.
Keep exploring.
Absolutely.
Keep imagining the possibilities.
Because the future is ours to create.
It really is.